Hailey Darlene Dunn was born on August 28, 1997, in Scurry County, Texas. From the very beginning, she was a much-loved daughter, sister, and friend. She grew up in the small town of Colorado City, Texas, a close-knit West Texas community that would later become the centre of nationwide media attention following her disappearance. Hailey's short life was marked by the ordinary joys and experiences of a young teenager: school, cheerleading, friends, hobbies and family. But her story would also come to symbolise the devastation of loss and the relentless pursuit of justice after tragedy. Hailey was the daughter of Clint Dunn and Billie Jean Dunn. She also had a half-brother, David, who was 3 years her senior. At the time of her disappearance, David was 16 years old, whilst Hailey was 13. Though her parents were separated, Hailey remained close to both of them. Her father lived just a block away, and she often spent time with him and her siblings. At home, Hailey lived with her mother, Billie Jean, David, her brother, and Billie's boyfriend, Sean Adkins, who had moved into the family home. Despite the challenges of growing up in a broken household, Hailey's life was filled with moments of laughter, energy, and light. She was known for her sense of humour, her mischievous pranks, and the way she loved spending time with friends and family. Her father, Clint, later said of his daughter, quote, "Hailey was just the all-American kid. She was old-fashioned. She played in the dirt. She was hilariously funny. She was a comedian. She lit up the room. She wasn't shy. She really made people feel good. She did really good wholesome things that a 13-year-old should. She had a good life. She was a very happy person, and she was well loved." Hailey attended Colorado City Middle School, where she was a bright and active student. She was particularly known for her love of sports, such as softball, but especially her role as a cheerleader, a position that reflected her enthusiasm, energy, and outgoing nature. Cheerleading gave her the opportunity to participate in school spirit, form strong friendships, and channel her natural joy into performance. Outside of school, Hailey enjoyed the same hobbies many young teenagers loved in the early 2010s. She was especially fond of playing Guitar Hero, the popular music video game that let players perform rock songs on a simulated guitar. Music and singing were central to Hailey's life. She often sang with her friends and family, turning ordinary moments into small performances. On December the 27th, 2010, it began like any other day for Hailey, but it would sadly end in tragedy. That afternoon, she returned home after being at school. According to Sean Adkins, Billie Jean Dunn's boyfriend, and the last known person to see her alive, 13-year-old Hailey told him she was going to visit her father Clint, who lived half a block away, and then spend the night at her friend Mary Beth's. However, Hailey never made it to her father's home, nor did she arrive at Mary Beth's. In fact, Mary Beth's mother later confirmed that there had been no plans for Hailey to stay over that night. She hadn't even known Hailey was supposed to visit. This was the first clear sign that something was awry. When Hailey did not return home, her mother Billie reported her missing the following day on December the 28th, 2010. At first, the case was treated as a missing child incident, and law enforcement and volunteers began to search for Hailey across Colorado City and the surrounding areas. The search for Hailey drew national attention and brought together both local residents and people from across Texas. At first, volunteers came in large numbers, but as weeks turned into months, their numbers dwindled. Yet, there were still groups determined to keep searching. One notable effort came from Fort Hood, where Sergeant Brian Moody and his wife Misty organised volunteers from the 4th Battalion, 5th Air Missile Defence Artillery Regiment, the 69th Air Defence Artillery Brigade. Moved by the lack of progress in the search, Misty and Brian rallied 28 soldiers and spouses to travel nearly 500 miles round trip to join the search efforts. The volunteers searched rugged terrain filled with cactus, dry ravines, and the threat of snakes, braving both harsh weather and emotional strain. For many of the soldiers, the experience was overwhelming and emotional, yet they persisted, returning multiple times to continue the search. Their dedication left an impression on the community and earned the gratitude of Hailey's family. Clint personally called to thank them for their commitment in finding his daughter, and their quiet professionalism inspired other volunteers to keep going. For more than 2 years, Hailey remained missing, with no clues as to where she went, nor what fate befell her. But then, in March of 2013, skeletal remains and clothing fragments were found near Lake J.B. Thomas in Scurry County, roughly 20 miles away from Colorado City, by a man searching for fossils in the area. The man recognised the clothing as similar to that of Hailey Dunn and immediately alerted authorities of the grisly find. After forensic testing was conducted, the remains were sadly confirmed to belong to 13-year-old Hailey. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head, the injury itself being described as catastrophic by the medical examiner. Hailey had likely been struck in the skull with a heavy object, and the injuries had occurred around the time of her death. Her discovery brought both heartbreak and closure to her family, but also opened a new chapter of questions about who had killed her and what the motive was behind it. From the very beginning, suspicion had surrounded Sean Adkins, Billy Dunn's boyfriend, and the last known person to see Hailey alive. He was officially named a person of interest early in the case and remained the primary suspect for years. However, the investigation was plagued with problems. Billy Dunn, Hailey's mother, initially defended Adkins, saying she did not believe he had anything to do with Hailey's disappearance, but as time went on, she began to reconsider. After their subsequent breakup, she reported that Adkins began harassing her, threatening her, and showing a side of himself she hadn't previously seen. She later admitted that she believed it was, quote, a good possibility that Adkins had been involved in her daughter's vanishing. She later admitted in court to lying about Adkins' whereabouts when her daughter disappeared, and was later sentenced to 1 year probation. Despite these various suspicions, law enforcement struggled to build a solid case. Evidence was sparse, timelines were complicated, and key forensic opportunities were missed in the days after Hailey vanished. Searches of Adkins' car and the family home did not yield any results, and critical forensic testing was not performed. Polygraphs were also taken, however Adkins removed himself from 2 of them and failed a third. His electronic devices also showed evidence of inappropriate content involving minors, though he never faced charges for this during the search for Hailey. He even had boxes filled with documents about serial killers and sexual sadists, but this wasn't enough to work with. One piece of evidence involved soil found on Adkins' work boots. Near-infrared spectroscopy tests suggested a 94 to 95% match with soil from the site where Hailey's body was discovered. However, when the soil was later tested by the FBI using an alternative method, the results were deemed unreliable for courtroom use. Without solid forensic evidence, the case remained circumstantial. Cell phone records and timelines also raised questions but failed to provide definitive proof. Records showed that Hailey was alive as late as 2:27 p.m. on the day she disappeared, while Adkins's phone placed him in different locations at around the same period. The narrow window of opportunity for him to commit the crime, between 3 and 5 p.m, made the case even harder to prove. In June of 2021, more than a decade after Hailey's disappearance, Sean Adkins was finally arrested and charged with her murder. Investigators believed he had killed her and tampered with her corpse. He was indicted by a grand jury and a trial was scheduled for June of 2022. However, delays soon followed, with the trial pushed back multiple times due to new evidence, defence motions and requests for continuances. By May of 2023, prosecutors offered Adkins a plea deal of 30 years in prison, but he and his defence team rejected it. Adkins denied any involvement in Hailey's death. Then, in a devastating blow to Hailey's family, the charges were dismissed altogether in June of 2023. The dismissal was made, quote, without prejudice, meaning charges could be refiled in the future, but for the time being, Adkins was released from custody after 2 years in jail. The official reason for dismissal was lack of sufficient evidence. Court documents noted that the case was entirely circumstantial, with no direct eyewitnesses and no forensic evidence that could conclusively link Adkins to the crime. Hailey's family, particularly her father Clint, has been outspoken about the failures of the investigation. He has alleged that evidence was mishandled, files were disorganised, and important reports went missing. He has continued to advocate for further investigation, determined to hold someone accountable for his daughter's death. Even today, more than a decade later, Hailey's story continues to resonate. On what would have been her 27th birthday in August of 2024, her family and supporters shared a message honouring her memory. They remembered her fondly, emphasising that moving on without justice would be an insult to her memory, vowing to continue fighting until accountability is achieved. The Facebook group Who Killed Hailey Dunn remains active, keeping her story alive and pressing for answers. While the case is currently unresolved, prosecutors maintain that Adkins is still the primary suspect. The possibility remains that new evidence or renewed investigative efforts could one day bring closure. The story of Hailey Dunn is one of both light and darkness. In life, she was a spirited, funny, and talented young girl who filled her home and community with joy. In death, she became the centre of a mystery that has yet to be fully solved, leaving her family to grapple with grief, unanswered questions, and the pursuit of justice. Her disappearance shocked the community. Her discovery broke many hearts, and her case has since highlighted the flaws and challenges of the criminal justice system when evidence is scarce or mishandled. Yet her family's refusal to give up ensures that Hailey's memory will not fade, and their determination stands as a testament to the love they hold for her. Hailey's story remains unfinished, but one truth endures: she will never be forgotten.